Hello everyone, my name is Reverend Melissa Kennedy and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about animal communication and past lives with animals, reincarnation if you will, pet mediumship, familiars, how our animals are a part of our lives in such a really big way. Um, and so if you're new to this kind of thing and you're not into past lives or reincarnation or any of that stuff, this probably isn't the video for you. But I'm going to say, since you found me and you found the title of this video, chances are this message is meant for you. So along my journey as an animal communicator, I have found out that our animals are, of course, much more than these cute little furry companions that sit there and look at us and want to snuggle with us and be with us all the time. And, all of that. Yeah, they are all those things, but they're so much more than that. There are healers, there are confidants, there are best friends, there are soulmates. They're so, so important. And yes, they are our family. And so, as I've journeyed along my life, animals have always been, I say, my Achilles heel because I love animals so much. I cannot get enough. Like, I always have had animals my whole entire life. I think there was one stage in my life when I had to live in an apartment and I couldn't have an animal, and I went bananas because I was just so used to having an animal companion with me always, whether it's horses, dogs, cats, rabbits, you name it. I did chickens. I grew up on a little farm, so we just always had animals. They were always a part of my life. I just always loved them. I remember seeing my first horse and it was love at first sight and the connection was so strong. And I couldn't get enough. Once I saw a horse, that was it. It was over. Drove my parents bananas. They had to keep sugar cubes in the glove box in every field that we went to. They had to stop. Otherwise, they'd have to listen to me, And I would get out of the car, just this little girl with the sugar cubes in my hand, and I would go to the fence. And, a lot of times it was a no-brainer. They were close by. They'd come and I'd give them the sugar cubes and we'd hang out. And then my parents would say, okay, it's time to go. So we'd go. But I remember one day in particular, we went, and these horses were way out in the middle of this beautiful field, green grass, and they're just merrily grazing. And so out comes Melissa with the sugar cubes and the thought, I want to meet you. You need to come here. I have these sugar cubes for you. And I didn't realize it at the time. I'm just this little girl. I was probably maybe 3.5, 4 years old. And I'm just standing there, but I knew that I was calling them to me and they were going to come. I never had any doubt in my mind that they wouldn't come to me. Never even dawned on me that they wouldn't. And so I remember seeing the horses, they were grazing, and one of them lifted its head up and looked at the other horse. And then the other horse looked at that horse, and then they looked at me. And then the first horse that looked at the other horse started to walk towards me. And the other horse was like, okay, I guess I'll go too. So they both came over, and like I said, they were way out in the middle of a field. There's no way that they should have come to a little girl just standing there at the fence. But they did. And I spent time with them and I gave them the sugar cubes. I remember them breathing on my hand. And I just loved the smell of the horses and the breath and their soft velvety muzzle. And if you love horses, I know you know what I mean. Because when you first see one, that's it. You just know you're in love. So horses were my knowing and understanding at an early age that I was an animal communicator, but there was nobody there to tell me that, you could do this for other people and maybe this could be a career for you or things like that. So I did learn that as I was riding my horse. I was about 14 years old, and I discovered through many, many trail rides that this horse was reading my mind. We were actually communicating telepathically. And I tested my theory one day. We came to a fork in the road and I had mapped it out in my mind like I always did. And I had in my mind I was going left. But when we got to the juncture, I just let the reins go loose and I thought to myself, we're going right. And the horse stopped. And I actually heard him say, "Oh, what do you mean? We're going this way." And I'm like, change my mind. We're going this way. And the horse was like, really? Because he was not used to me changing my mind. He was so used to me like planning everything out. He was tapped in. He already knew his assignment before we even started the ride. And that day, I kind of pulled the wool or the rug out from under his feet and changed things up. And we both learned something that day. You know, he learned that I could hear him and he could hear me. And he was such a special horse. He actually, you know, I know that horse would have laid his life down for me. He actually spooked one day. We had somebody out walking along. I used to ride around cranberry bogs. I grew up north. And this really strange guy was out walking, and I rode alone all the time. And that particular day, I was riding bareback because I was a really good rider. You know, it didn't bother me. I was riding bareback, and he spooked, and I wasn't ready. He saw the guy, but I didn't. And so I remember he kind of stopped and then ran forward, and somehow I went over his head. And all I remember was laying on my back and seeing him jump over me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. But he got about 2 strides ahead, and he figured out I was no longer on his back, and he turned around and came back and stood over me because I was a little bit stunned. So I got up and I jumped back on, and we took off. And I also had another situation with that horse when I was older, when I was in college, and I was riding, and we'd moved to Maine, and it was the wilderness, and there was a lot more wild animals in this area of the world. And I felt my horse get really, really nervous, and I was like, oh gosh, there's something in the woods. And I heard this grunting sound like a pig, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a bear. And my horse paused because he remembered that episode where he took off and I wasn't ready. And he actually said to me, are you ready? And I'm like, oh yeah. And we ran so fast. And we got away from that bear. And there was actually, I knew a woman there that she had been riding out in this area with another woman, and this bear came out of the woods and actually ripped part of this woman's horse's tail off, but they got away too. But so it was dangerous. You know, there were bears, and I was out riding. I was pretty fearless back in the day. Today I'd be much more cautious, but back then I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof, you know, that kind of mentality. But I'm thankful that I had that really great connection with my horse. So those are 2 times that he saved my life and saved both of our lives from a bear attack. So I always like sharing stories. I never know what I'm going to come on here and say, and I wasn't expecting to tell that story. I was just going to talk about past lives with horses and animals and all of that. So most of the animals that I have now on my farm, I've actually had already in this incarnation as Melissa. And one, I'll share this story. Sorry, I just kicked my little stand. My recent experience was with my black cat. His name is Midnight. So about 2 months before he showed up at my farm, I was thinking to myself, man, I really want a black cat. And I couldn't justify adopting a cat because I already had 2 cats already. Actually, no, 3 at the time. We had an older cat, and he's since passed away. But I had 3 cats, so I was like, I can't really get another one right now. So that was okay. So I never told anybody I really wanted another cat, and so all of a sudden I started dreaming about this black cat. And I'm not one to remember my dreams unless they're a teaching dream, and I'm supposed to remember a dream. So this cat visited me again, the second time in a dream, and I'm like, there's something to this. This is a spirit cat. Like, this cat is like a familiar to me. And familiars are animals that we've had through many incarnations, and possibly in this incarnation that we're in right now. And about, like I said, 2 months after, I had that dream of this black cat, and I just felt this need that I had to have one. This black cat showed up at my farm, and I remember when I saw it, our eyes locked, and I looked at it, and I knew instantly I was going to be able to tame this cat down. I could just see it in his eyes. That was my cat. And we had ordered some chicken from Sam's Club in a can, and they all got dented. And so I thought, wow, the universe even supplied the dented cans of chicken so I could make friends with this black cat. And so that's how we bonded. So I would go out and I would sit on the end of the horse trailer. I have videos of that. And he was just this feral, skinny, petrified cat that had been just abandoned and abused and traumatized so badly. But yet I saw his spirit, I saw his eyes, I saw his heart. And so fast forward to today, I had manifested he would become my office cat, and he is. He's a house cat. He had some illness. He had an infection. He got in a fight with another cat, and he's more of a lover than a fighter. So in this process of him not being well, I had to bring him inside. And I don't let him out anymore. We kind of made an agreement. I asked him if it was okay, if he would be just an inside cat now. And he thought about it and he said, okay, but you have to promise to keep my litter box clean. And I'm like, deal. I can do that. So it was easy. He still likes to look out the window and watch all the birds and what's going on outside, but he's super happy as an indoor cat. So that's my story about Midnight. His story is actually published in a book. It's called Women of Spirit. And Midnight Story is in that book. And it's also published on my website, RevMelissaKennedy.com, or it might still be WhisperingWindPsychicCowgirl.com. I just finished, upgrading my website, changing my name so people could remember it easily. And I'll always be Whispering Wind Psychic Cowgirl in my heart, because that's how a lot of the spiritual awarenesses came to me, kind of in the wind, in the whispers of my heart and in my mind and what I could hear from spirit. And I'll always be that. So anyway, that's my story about Midnight. And most recently, I'll share a story of an animal communication I just did with a dog last week. And we started talking about familiars and how our animals can be with us and incarnate with us in this lifetime more than once, if we want them to. And even if we don't know we're doing it, we can bring them back in, and all of a sudden we'll just say, I want to adopt a dog. And you'd be like, well, I like cats. Why do I want a dog? Well, your familiar wanted a lifetime as a dog and you felt drawn to this dog. So that happens. But anyway, this particular dog was sharing the past incarnations that she's had with her owner already. And so there was a cat, there was a parrot, and I believe another dog. So it was pretty cool. And we didn't expect to go down that path, but you never know what's going to come through in an animal communication. So when you do get a reading, have an open mind, because you never know what's going to come through. And it might not click right away when you get the reading. Make sure you take notes and keep it all in mind, because I guarantee you a light bulb will go off in your mind. Somebody will say something to you and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I forgot that. That's what that meant. I have to call Melissa and tell her. And that happens all the time. And that happened with an animal communication I did a few years back with a cat that had been with this woman in an early stage of her life in childhood, and this cat brought in radishes into the reading. I kept seeing these bunches of radishes in this white cat, but this cat that I was speaking to was not white. And so I said, I believe this cat's been with you in another incarnation. And I explained what I saw and what the cat showed me, and it didn't make sense to her at the time, but she did end up messaging me back and telling me that the radishes were a farmer that lived down the road from her when she was a child, and that they would get radishes from this farmer every summer, and then they would in turn share the radishes with people in the neighborhood. Excuse me. So that was another evidential mediumship and an evidential proof that our animals do reincarnate and come back to us. Super cool story. I love sharing my stories. I hope that these stories have helped you to connect in more deeply with your spiritual path, your spiritual journey. And if you would like a reading, you can reach out and visit my website, and we can set a time. I have a phone number on there, and you can send me a message, and we can set up an appointment time. That's how I work. That's how I do it. And so with that being said, I'll have many more stories. So if you've liked this story, Please hit the like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with people that you know that might be curious about animal communication or about spiritual things, and maybe they're having an awakening, maybe they're opening up. And also, I will post a link to my podcast because I also do a podcast and talk about spiritual topics, and I have many podcasts, and you might want to go in and just scroll through and see if something appeals to you. I'm going to be doing another YouTube video about angels next, because if it were not for the angels, I would not be able to do any of this energy work. And so I'm feeling a little in my heart right now. And so whoever's going to watch this video in the future is going to need a little heart chakra clearing. So I'm already setting the intention that you receive clearing and healing of your heart chakra. Thank you, Spirit, for allowing me to share my experiences and my love of animals and my connection with animals. And I hope this helps to build your connection with your animal companions as well. I wish you well, and signing off till next time, Reverend Melissa Kennedy. Bye now.